Let us rebuild the wall with the help of our God. There was a New Yorker cartoon that showed Charles Dickens sitting in the office of his editor, and the editor is holding a manuscript that Dickens has submitted. It's kind of like a student going in to meet with the faculty member to talk about that paper that you turned in recently. And Dickens' editor looks at him and says, "Now, Mr. Dickens, it's either the best of times or it's the worst of times. It can't be both." But you and I know with Charles Dickens that it can. And we today have one of those classic best and worst times when it comes to life in what we've known as the mainline churches. We know easily that it's the worst of times and that we're getting close to celebrating 50 years of consecutive membership loss. We know that the changes in the place of our denominations is such that the historian William Hutchinson's talked about it as another disestablishment. The sociologist of religion, Robert Wuthnow, talks about a restructuring of American religion. Martin Marty talked about seismic shifts that have taken place in the religious denominational landscape. And perhaps the theologian Harvey Cox put it best when he said, "We've gone through a religious deregulation." Yes, we know it's the worst of times, but in many ways it's also the best of times. We've seen in recent times churches become far larger than we ever thought was possible for churches in the United States. At the same time, we've seen churches that are much smaller than they used to be, but they are 10 times more engaged with their community and far more representative of their communities than they were in their past so-called glory days. We're in a time where we've gone from mission being sending some checks to mission being hands-on and personal engagement. We're seeing developments in worship and music and the arts that's connecting the faith with people that had no interest in it before. And we see a heightened sensitivity to diversity and inclusiveness. And as monocultural as our churches have been, every year now, there are fewer churches that represent only one race. So they're bad things and they're good things. But in every case where there's something good happening, there is the presence of visionary spiritual leadership. That's the common denominator. So what is this visionary spiritual leadership we talk about? It's simply that leadership that helps a faith community move from its past to its future. Now, the direction of leadership is always the future, but it always begins with the past. You might say, well, why, if the goal is change, if the direction is the future, why would we begin with something as conserving as the past? It's because when there is renewal in the church, it comes not from an abandoning of our heritage, our theology, our tradition, but from a renewed appreciation for it, or at least for that DNA that John Wesley would call true religion, and not the time-bound forms in which it may be expressed. So leadership is always about change, because we can't become what we need to be by remaining what we are. Leadership is always about change, because the current state of things is never synonymous with God's ultimate will. So, leaders are those who come to know the truth, to meet the new challenges, the new circumstances, and the new realities. And to the extent that religious leaders are successful in doing that, the faith continues and communities of faith are renewed. Leadership is always about change, but that's a problem for churches, because religious communities are not wired for change. They are wired for stability. The unofficial mission statement for countless churches is, the mission of our church is to stay as good as we are. Nancy Ammerman, the sociologist of religion, has studied thousands of congregations, and she says that when communities change around a church, or when the needs of the people within the church change, churches have multiple options from which to choose in how they will respond. But despite having these various options, the majority of churches, when change occurs around them, will respond with only one of those choices, and that is to keep doing things the same way, or a little bit harder, what I call vigorous inertia. Now, Nehemiah gives us some help. Nehemiah hears of the suffering of his people, the problems they're facing. He gets permission to go back and to help them. And then in chapter 2, verses 17 and 18 of Nehemiah, you have this wonderful 4-part outline of leadership. It begins by Nehemiah helping define their current reality. Nehemiah comes back, he does some inspection, he does some data gathering, probably used some tools from the Lewis Center for Church Leadership. Not everyone knows that. That's why you're at Wesley Seminary, to learn that kind of thing. So, but then he says, look at the trouble we're in, how the gates are down, the walls down, the gates are burned. Now, this was not Nehemiah sharing his agenda, his vision. I mean, Nehemiah was not someone who had spent his whole life saying, I hope one day I can build a wall somewhere. No. He wasn't interested in wall building. He was interested in doing God's will. So what he's doing here is helping to define reality. So if somebody disagreed, there's no need for an argument. Let's figure out, are the walls in good shape or are they down? Peter Senge says, the most limiting factor for a group is the inability to talk about the truth. So Nehemiah is helping everybody get together on the same page, helps define reality. And then we see the second part of leadership in that he helps discern and articulate a common shared vision. That vision was captured in 3 words: let us rebuild. And so Nehemiah and all the other people, They had multiple hopes and dreams and needs and daily tasks, but it was this vision of rebuilding the wall that was central to them and central to their faith community. And then we see the third lesson of leadership. Not only did he define reality, help discern and articulate the vision, but we see that the people confirm the vision as we go into verse 18, where then they said, let us start building. Of all the things we don't know about leadership, there are a few things we do know, and one is it's always about a group. It's never about the leader. Leadership is not so much about the leader as it is whether the group, the people God has given the leader, if they are being helped to take their next fateful step. So all the people are involved because that's where God's wisdom is. There's a popular view now that the leader gets the vision from God, casts that vision, and elicits people to support that vision. Well, I see vision, God's vision, as something that's given to the people, that's often first discerned and named by a leader. But everyone has a piece of God's wisdom, and no person has all of God's wisdom. So you involve the people because no matter how right the vision, it has to be right for us, for our place, our time, our setting. So you involve people not for political reasons, so they'll pay for it, so they'll vote for it, even so they'll own it. But for spiritual discernment reasons, that's where the wisdom is. And every person has some piece of that. Define reality, name the vision, the people confirm the vision, and then we get the fourth step. Everyone makes a commitment. In verse 18 it says, so they committed themselves to the common good. That was the capital campaign pledge. That was the charge conference action, or the vestry, or the session, or the business meeting approval. They got a unanimous vote for this new building program. So that's 4 steps. You can take that, you could put it together, put a bow on the top of it. But that's not the end, because why? We're still in chapter 2. Why would there be all these other chapters left if we've just wrapped up leadership in Nehemiah? You see, this is just the beginning. Now, a lot's happened, but it's the beginning. A mistake that a lot of leaders make. And if you're ordained, the chances of making this mistake go up about 100 times. Here's the mistake. We think if we say something, we've done something. So we are concerned, I'll preach a sermon on that. Or we put a slogan on the front of the bulletin. Or even we go to the church council and get them to vote for something. And we think we've done something. Well, we have. Not much, but we've done something. No matter how hard it was to get to this point and to get that unanimous vote, that's just 10 or 20% of change. There's a lot more that comes afterward. In fact, it got so difficult that when it was all over, everyone looked and said, that could only have happened with the help of our God. That's how hard it got. So let's look at what took place after those 4 important steps of leadership. Once they came down, had the unanimous vote, they all held hands. Pastor called on Miss Plush Plume, the oldest member in the congregation, to give a closing prayer. People were weeping and they walked away. Pastor, we've never been this united since I've been here. Oh, it didn't last long. They faced obstacles. It was too hot. They were trying to build in the hottest time of the year. Some said it's costing too much. Some said it's taking too long. Some said that some people not doing their fair share of the work. They had opposition from outside. They had some internal opposition going. Rosabeth Moss Cantor says, everything looks like failure in the middle. Unfortunately, it's the middle where leaders spend most of their time. You see, no matter how hard those first steps of understanding the context, discerning the vision, getting the commitment of the people, it becomes just a beginning to be followed by much hard work. Now, in one way, Nehemiah is a story of success. They got through the middle, rebuilt the wall in 52 days, and had a great celebration. But in another way, the story of Nehemiah teaches us a kind of humility for spiritual leadership. Notice that the book of Nehemiah does not end with the celebration. There's more to come, and it's not all good. In fact, the unfaithfulness of the people to God that Nehemiah had insisted that they had to repent of before the wall was rebuilt returns. The greatest levels of leadership are always characterized by humility and perseverance. Humility in not running ahead of God, and perseverance in knowing that sometimes we will succeed, sometimes we will fail, but that all the time God will take our faithful efforts and use them as part of God's great story of redemption. And so we learn all we can about leadership, and we understand that everything will look like failure in the middle, and we never lose sight of the vision God has for our lives. But we always remember, most of all, that no matter what our ministry is, it can only be done with the help of our God.